Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. So this week's episode picks up where last week's episode left off with Sherlock getting arrested by a DIA agent. He's Defense Intelligence Agency. They're not go down the way I was expecting it to be. Like, the fact is he's so blatant. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm the killer. And just to prove to you that this isn't some like messed up test or something like that, it's like, no, like he pulls out his gun, shoots the glass where it's like a two-way mirror, but it's like there's no one there. He's like, fact is, I just did that, and I'm telling you that I'm a killer just because no one's going to believe because there's no evidence to prove that he. But basically, all these murders were committed by him. And basically, he's bringing up the fact is, well, we know about your dad, Moreland, all the stuff he's been doing since he joined the little cabal or whatever. It's like, well, basically, if Sherlock keeps digging too deeply, he's like, yo, I'm actually going to put all that on you. So basically, because for him, killing, it's like he's already got enough bodies to deal with, but he made them all look like accidents. And nevertheless, none of it can really be tied necessarily back to him. And Sherlock, for him, it's a situation. It was more like a power play maneuver, which Sherlock is kind of more so accustomed to. So he didn't like. I mean, it was more so to kind of put the fear in him more so than anything, just to be like, yeah, this isn't like some simple like I'm gonna beat the crap out of you and interrogate. It's just like because I don't need no more loose ends. I don't need an extra body to deal with. So it's like I can just lock you up in the deepest, darkest prison, essentially, by saying that you're doing all the stuff that your father's responsible for. Which I'm surprised, like, his dad, I'm sure his dad could actually do something about that, but I guess it's a situation where Sherlock didn't want to involve his dad or whatever. I mean, especially since this guy's got all this information. If Moreland kind of went after him, I mean, might even be a situation where Moreland was like, okay, Sherlock, you'd handle it by yourself. I don't know. I'm very interested. They keep mentioning it. I mean, obviously, it's a pretty big thing because it's what was kind of the big thing last season. So obviously, it's going to still have ramifications continuing forward. But I'm so interested. I want to see more of that. I want to know more about that whole cabal situation. I feel like because this season's actually kind of running. Like, I think this was episode 16, I think. I could be wrong. This season's usually only have like 23, 24 episodes, something like that. So already like seasons most of the way over. It's weird. I forget that fact is a lot of stuff is winding down. But nevertheless, since I was talking about Moreland really quickly, I want to bring this up. I'm not sure, but the actress who plays Sai's wife, I can't remember her name, but like her character's name, but wasn't she on Fringe? I think that's the same actress. I could be mistaking her for someone else, but I think that's her. And if it's her, I mean, it's very interesting casting because obviously, John Noble, who plays Moreland, was also on Fringe. They were both main characters up there. I mean, obviously, it would have meant more if they were like in the same episode, but at the same time, it's just like his name was mentioned in the episode. And she's in. I didn't even notice that last episode until this episode. I could be completely wrong, so it might not even be the same actress, but nevertheless, I've been like going off on a tangent. I do apologize for that. Obviously, the main part of the episode, just the conspiracy gets bigger and bigger about like what this is all about. What do these four murders have to like? What does this all have to do with a case that happened in London? Like it was like a simple hit. Like I mean, granted, it's kind of sad to kind of simplify it to a hit and run, but it's like it's not something that should really need the attention of the American government because even like. Sherlock was like, yeah, the DIA make even the CIA look very transparent. I'm like, wow, that's some, because I'd never really heard of the DIA before now, but I mean, maybe it's something I've heard in other cop shows, but nevertheless, what's even more interesting is the fact that this guy is an analyst and he's doing all of this. Like, he's just like a numbers guy, but it's like, I mean, I guess like the point is, the matter is, no matter like if you're high enough, if you're in a high position in the government, I guess you learn some self-defense stuff or something. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting that like he was able to kind of commit all the. When you hear analyst, you think of a dude that's just like working behind the keys. You don't really think of a guy that goes out and commits all these murders and stuff like that. But it seems like this runs very deep. Basically, the reason why this all happened is because Tom. The bad, like Eli, the bad guy that kind of started all this with the, like his trial and everything, the one involved in the hit and run situation. His lawyer, Tom, basically was schizophrenic, but he wasn't on his meds around that time of the trial. And basically he ran his mouth about something he wasn't supposed to. And because everyone, it was a pre-trial thing, so there weren't like any jury or anything involved, but everyone that was there, with the exception of Sherlock and obviously Kitty, just because they weren't a part of those proceedings, were all killed because they heard something they weren't supposed to. Because basically he talked about a Venezuelan bomb being in a toilet or something like that, and it happens 3 years later. I mean, obviously present day. It seems that this was what they were meant to covering up, because basically it was a situation where basically the Venezuelan president wasn't very popular. This was a situation to make him kind of popular. It's like, oh, gain a little sympathy. So, and they kind of blamed it on his competitors and stuff like that. It's also connected to the law firm that Tom worked for. His boss is neck deep in this. I mean, to the point that Anson actually tried to personally kill him himself, which I'm actually surprised. Anson didn't seem like the type of, I mean, granted, he could have committed all those other murders by himself. It's just, he never seemed like the type, once again, going back to the analyst thing, I guess you don't judge a psychotic book by its psychotic cover, right? But the fact of the matter is, I thought it was a situation like, I was like, I'm surprised you would do that yourself. I'm sure I would have thought you'd hire someone, especially with Sherlock kind of being so up in your business now. But nevertheless, it turns, which really quickly, I love the fact is of how Kitty handled that situation. Watson is like, everyone get down, and the guy's like, what? Kitty just turns around, kicks him in the nuts as hard as she can, just so he'll fall down. It's like, that's just terrible. I mean, amazing yet terrible. Amazing in the fact is that that's how you just, I mean, quick reaction time and everything. But then the fact of the matter is, that's how you get him to duck down, is by kicking him super hard in the nuts. And they even have a conversation about it later on. It's like, you played soccer, didn't? And she's like, excuse me, I think you mean football. He's like, yeah, I do. It's like, holy crap. But it's almost like he was complimenting her. It's like, holy crap, you kick, I mean, good legs on you. I mean, you kicked the hell out of my nuts. It's almost like that's what he was saying. But it turns out that this is like some deep conspiracy. Basically, there's these files called the Fidel files. Basically, a whole bunch of stuff that's been collected over 50 years. A lot of intel. It's like probably like some of the biggest collection of intel in existence that no one really has been able to get their hands on. Everyone wants to, but it's not that easy. Well, basically, Anson wanted that. So all this, the whole Venezuelan president situation, the bombings, all that, this agency were all targets for that. I mean, the reason why Tom went off running his mouth about it was because his boss came to him and like, hey, dude, I don't know what to do about this whole situation. And, you know, in that particular case, he wasn't on his medicine, so he ended up blabbering about something he shouldn't have blabbered about. So, but it turns out, you know, later on, Anson kind of goes public with it. The moment he went public, I was like, okay, is there even more complexity to this? Because like, why would you be releasing this? Is someone actually forcing you? It's like someone that you're actually working with, like you're kind of the low grunt, while someone else higher above you is forcing you to do this, and they're going to kill you afterwards. And or I thought it was going to be like in the video or something, he's going to commit suicide. I mean, apparently commit suicide, but it's actually someone else forcing him or something like that. Turns out not to be the case. He is 100% behind this. Basically, he fakes essentially some nuclear weapons type of video and making it seem basically to incite a situation to kind of force the U.S. to go to war. Basically, Sherlock and them are able to know that it's a fake because they got a copy of the Fidel files too from the dude who works in that lawyer firm. And it turns out that this whole situation had just been a situation created by Anson for the purpose of starting a war. Because he's up there thinking like, oh yeah, I'm a patriot or whatever. It's like, you know, because he has such a stigma towards it that he's just like, oh, there's danger there. So it's kind of like, hey, we need to wipe them off the map or whatever. It's like all this. Everything, all these people's lives he's taken, and it was all for the purposes of starting a war where even more people would die. But he's thinking like, oh, I'm doing this for the betterment of my country. It's like, they don't see the threats that I see. And it's just like it's go back to the fact that it's psychopath. Like all this, 4 people dead, you know, 3 people part of the government, you know, plus all those countless people that died in that Venezuelan bomb situation too. So it's like, there are a lot of people dead in this situation, and he just continues to call himself a patriot because he thinks he's doing it for the right reasons. So that was an interesting twist I wasn't expecting. So what I find very interesting is the fact is that basically there was a word said in the video that people interpreted as something else. It was like the word Kimmy or something. And it turns out that Sherlock is like, oh no, the reason why it was called the name where Kimmy came from is from the dog or whatever. Literally, and I thought it was some kind of like metaphorical joke or whatever, that he was literally in his mom's basement making the videos. He was literally in his mom's basement making the videos because what they heard, Kimmy, that wasn't someone saying that in a different language. That was his mom calling for their dog. So I was like, wow, that was kind of interesting. I mean, I guess even diabolical villains need a layer of their own to kind of commit atrocities, I guess, and and fake stuff to start wars and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of interesting. I do like the fact is that Sherlock has to go to the NSA guy. I was like, oh yeah, he's like, basically he's like, yeah, I'm going to tell you, I gave this a copy to this to like everyone I know, some news outlets as well as the NYPD, the FBI. I gave it to a lot of people so that you can't just like, He brings up the fact is that for him more so, it's like, oh, what the question you should be asking is whether or not I want the truth to come out. And I guess with the NSA is kind of like, I guess in my mind, when it looks at this situation, it's kind of like, hey, like, I might not want this truth to come. I mean, he doesn't really want a war, but I mean, granted, you don't know. It really depends on whether it's beneficial or not, because for some people, starting a war is very beneficial, which is kind of, I know it's it's messed up that's actually a mentality that you have to be worried about. That someone, that's the main reason to start a war. That's the sad truth matter is not some, like there are plenty of wars just in history, not even just TV show wise, in history that were started simply because it was like, it's beneficial for another person. Like, someone else can reap the benefits of it. I think that's like a crazy thing. It's fucking human nature for you, I guess. But nevertheless, that's not getting all into that and stuff. So interesting, like Sherlock's relationship with the NSA, and it's like, they have such a close-knit eye on him, because he even brings up the fact that it's like, yeah, you happen to be like 100, what was it, like 100 feet away. Like you happen to be right near the place where the DIA ended up dropping him off at the beginning of the episode when they let him go. Which I love that whole thing about, yeah, I'm going to get started on this after I go to the bathroom. I thought that was just kind of interesting. Just didn't seem like very Sherlock-like to me. But another part of this episode I thought was kind of interesting is the whole Kitty situation. I was wondering what it was about, because it did seem like he was a little shocked and kind of off kilter about it. Which, Joan was right that he was happy about it, but it did seem like he had to stick up his butt. And to me, I took it as like, oh, obviously he's mad because Kitty's leaving the detective. He's like, oh, all of you are the same. She's like, Joan was like, wait, you mean women? He's like, no, proteges. I'm like, is it a situation of like, it's the fact is that she's leaving detective work, meaning she won't be near you. Like, Sherlock has this very close-knit group of friends, and it's like a situation where I was like, oh, he feels like she's leaving him. So that's what, I mean, it kind of, but not really. It's actually a lot more simpler. The fact of the matter is, Kitty didn't keep in contact with him. That's what he's so hurt about. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, we're supposed to be friends, and in that 2-year period you've been going, you didn't contact me once, you didn't let me know you were okay, let alone the fact is that you were happy. He's like, all I ever wanted was your happiness. If you want to be a detective, I'm fine with that, But the fact of the matter is that you just didn't say anything to me. It's like, it hurts, Because it goes back to something that Joan brought up last episode. She was like, wait, it's been 2 years and you haven't been in contact with Kitty? And he was like, no, it's not because he didn't want to be. It's just because he didn't know how to contact her. She was always on the move. I mean, granted, I'm sure even with his sources, he wasn't able to I think it was a situation where he wanted to give her space. And it's like, if she wanted to talk, she'd come to me. I mean, maybe he did kind of use some of his sources to find her. You would think, granted, Kitty might be good at being under the radar or just kind of keeping away. But it was just more so than anything, he was hurt that his friend didn't contact him. It's like, we're friends, but you didn't talk to me. Because for Sherlock, like, being a friend is very important to him, because like, he has very few people in his life he would consider friends. Joan, Kitty, Gregson, Belle. So there's like Eugene. So like, even then it's like, that's like only a few people. Like, you could, he has associates, but I don't think he'd really call them friends. Because friends are the people that kind of act as the centerfold of his life that kind of help him with things. And so Kitty does apologize. But the reason why she did it was because it's not even just the fact that obviously she was on the run, but it's more so the fact is that she was kind of all in her head. Like, she felt like with Sherlock and them, like, not near her, she felt like her foundation was gone, so she felt like she was on rocky, was kind of on shaky ground. So she wanted to kind of dive into work. It's kind of like, just like Sherlock does. Like when things aren't kind of going 100% right, you just kind of dive into your work to keep yourself focused. But it quickly turned out, even before she had Archie, that she didn't really want to do detective work anymore because she found a different way to help people, and kind of, she felt like she wasn't empty. Like, she had detective work to kind of fill that hole in her after everything she'd been through, all the darkness that kind of seeped into her heart. But now it's like she didn't have to worry about that anymore. But she was afraid to tell Sherlock the truth because she thought once again, she thought she'd disappoint him, or, maybe he'd be hurt by the fact is that, because I guess in her way, she feels like it'd be messed up because it's like, I don't need detective work anymore. But for Sherlock, it's a part of him. It's not just, it's something that he needs on a daily basis to keep himself off of drugs, to keep himself centered. So it's an essential part of his life. And so I guess in her mind, it's like, I feel messed up. Like I'm like almost rubbing it in your face. Like, oh, I don't need detective work anymore. So that's how she saw it. But then she said something very sweet. Like, the fact is, like, no, we're not friends. At this point, we're family. I'm like, no, damn it, Kitty. I was like, the fact is, I thought there might have been something there, just the way that things did end up, because they brought that up at the beginning of the last episode. I thought that might have meant something, but I think it was like I love you, and then like family, in the family type of way. What she even goes as far as like, you know what, Sherlock, I'm making you and Watson godparents. And the fact is, Sherlock's like, I mean, I know you might not be able to believe this, but I've never been asked to be a godparent before. She's like, I know this is probably going to hurt, but yeah, I actually believe that you've never been one before. And he's like, so what do I do? Do I say a ritual? Do I pray or whatever? So now this also means that him and Kitty are obviously going to stay in contact. Granted, probably won't be like obviously part of the show, but probably hear some stuff here and there like, oh yeah, I just talked to Kitty or whatever. She moved back to the UK or whatever. So I wonder, is that what she's going to do? Like, she said she was quitting detective work, but I don't think she was specific about like where she was going to go afterwards. Is she going to stay in New York? Probably not. I mean, she wouldn't have a reason to, but it's probably a situation where she'll probably go back to London or something. Maybe. I don't know. I did like the fact is that, the nanny was messing with stuff, and then you had Joan be like, wait, where'd you get that? She's like, oh, I got it from here. It's like, okay. So there's like a 50-50, chance that that's actually a Victorian sex toy. And she's like, ew. It's like, oh, taking it away from Archie and just like, ew. Just kind of showing you all the random crap that Sherlock had scattered around his house. So overall, just a very good episode. I do love the, like I say, I like the fact that they brought Kitty back. It was one of the story elements. I was like, I hope, like, it's just like, so other story elements I want back, in case someone connected to Elementary randomly hears it. I want more Moriarty. Granted, I know that's probably, once again, I know that's probably not the easiest day because, it comes down to Natalie Dormer, like her scheduling and stuff like that, plus the writers and stuff, whether they want to do more with Moriarty, which I'm sure, because she's like, Moriarty is like, his arch enemy is just like, that's always been his main foe. I mean, truth be told, is other than Moriarty, I don't really know any classical Sherlock foes. I'm sure there's some here and there. I mean, it doesn't really count, but a Hound of Baskerville type of case situation, like, I know that's kind of, and that's something else. I'm just making this worse. More like, stuff with Moreland too. Granted, that comes down to like John Noble's schedule and stuff like that. Or once again, writing too. So it's like, that was last season. So they're probably, obviously they've got the Shinwell storyline and stuff now. So they're probably not trying to like blend too much together in like one particular season. Like, they have one overarching story and they want to stay focused on that. I also want to see more stuff with his brother. Last time we saw his brother was like season 2's finale. So it's been a while. So, I mean, like I said, Kitty's a good start, so it's like, maybe this gives me more hope for other storylines too to kind of pop up. I mean, to be fair, she wasn't directly there, but Moriarty was connected to those. I mean, that's why this whole Cabal situation is the way it is, because Moriarty got arrested. So that kind of put the Cabal in a bit of a hole. I mean, then her ex-husband took over and everything. But nevertheless, that's whatever. Anyway, that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.